Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall. Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys. I can't believe it. Let's open up that rave line! Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC is undefeated in the SEC. Wait, we're in the Big Ten. What's our record? Oh, no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Troy Radio, episode 601, coming to you on Thursday, June 12th. We're going to talk about the latest in USC football, including new news with the NCAA and revenue share. We're going to talk about what it means for the USC Trojans going forward. As always, you can follow us on social media at Rant of Troy. Email us, rantoftroy@fanside.com. Phone number, 818-643-7227, Second Woodsboro and Show. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Derritola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back. It's been a crazy busy time for us.
It's not going to get any less busy.
It's not going to get any less busy. We have like 5 of the next 6 weekends will be absolutely nuts for us. So coming up in the next couple of weeks, we'll have like pre-recorded episodes that will premiere on YouTube. They won't be live, but they're live. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they'll be live for people watching live if they want to watch live and participate in the chat. Yeah. But we will not be recording them live because we will not be.
We're going to be terrible
present.
people and not respond to the things that are put in the chat because, they'll be pre-recorded. But today, not pre-recorded. So what's up to Tim in LA, Grant in the chat says, been itching for some rot. Well, here we are. We are back with another episode. And Alicia, before we begin, I think that now is the perfect time to talk not only rev share, but everything else that's going on with college football, because yes, college football isn't, in the thick of the season, but things are happening elsewhere, such as basketball, because Underdog Fantasy with basketball is one of the best places to make picks during playoff basketball. And while they score buckets, you could score cash on one of the leading sports apps, which of course is available right now in your states, including California. Underdog has more than 100,000 5-star reviews, and millions of people join the masses by downloading the app and choosing whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, like points, assists, rebounds, or more, even a combination of those things sometimes. You can play as little as $1. If you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money, so turn $1 into $1,000 just by knowing ball. This week on Underdog, I'm looking at Pacers Thunder. It's the finals. So of course I'm taking Tyrese Halliburton because, like, why wouldn't I? He's been like the guy in the playoffs, so I'm picking him for higher than 18.5 points on Friday. And then I'm to SGA. I'm going lower than 46.5 combined points, rebounds, and assists. A lot of stuff to go there. A lot of different combinations of stats, but I'm going lower than 46.5. So you can download the Underdog app today and sign up with promo code Rant of Troy. Unlock a special offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. That's the promo code Rant of Troy. Go in there now and join me over there on Underdog. You must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates, including California. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Alicia, we're back. And there's nothing that says we're back like, talking about Underdog.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Underdog is there with us through the off season. And, there's always something going on in basketball or in baseball. And certainly in the NFL and increasingly in college football because sports leagues no longer have off seasons. They're just perpetually on doing something.
Yeah.
And that's where we find ourselves.
It's a completely new world. Grant in the chat says, do you think if you asked Michael and Alicia from 600 episodes ago, would they believe that schools would actually be playing players directly in 2025? I don't know. I'm guessing no, because the landscape of college football back then when we started this pod, 2012 is when we started. You joined in 2013. Joined the pod in 2013. We've talked about it before that like back then, the consensus was that, you know, Reggie Bush, evil. USC, evil for paying Reggie Bush, right? That changed drastically over like the next 5 years or so to the point that like nobody cared when like, was it Laramie Tunsil got in trouble for, was he one of the ones that like, you know, goddamn that Ole Miss had infractions with? Whoever it was,
there were a bunch of, there were a lot of, there was no shortage of individuals.
Menzel signing footballs, remember?
Yeah, Menzel.
Like
and
everybody was like, well, you should get theirs. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is. I think the landscape and the understanding of how compensation goes for players and whether or not players should just be unpaid mercenaries has completely changed. So yes and no. Yes, in the sense of like, this sounds inevitable that we're always getting to this point, but 600 episodes ago when we started the pod, I don't know that we would say that we'd get here, right?
600 episodes, if you had told me that by 2025 schools would be paying players directly, I would have said, okay, that makes sense because the sport is eventually going to get to a place where they have to start compensating players. If you had asked me then how long, like to pick a date for when revenue share would come into college football, I don't think I would have picked 2025. I would have put it further out.
Sure.
But like with technology, I think what we're seeing, you know, you think about technology in the last 100 years, the technological advances that the human race has come up with has been accelerated to a degree that just is beyond, like, magnitudes higher than the previous 1,000 years of acceleration of like technological advances. We are just advancing far quicker than anybody has ever done. And I think that we're seeing that from the college football side of things. Like, college football had shifts, they'd had changes, but every change in the past stuck, and then it was like a decade before the next big thing, or like you know 8 years, and then 5 years, and then and now we're in a situation, we're going to talk about this later, like I don't think anybody in college football right now can sit here and say on June 12th, 2026 that we that things will be exactly as they are now.
Yeah. I think when you talk about if you're writing the story of college football, the first chapter is like the Rutgers-Princeton game in 1869, right? Then I think you have like the birth of college football in general, in the sense of like what it was in the early 1900s. Touch on things like the potential move to rugby in the late 1800s, early 1900s, all that kind of stuff. Then I think the next biggest pillar is the start of sort of modern-ish college football, which is the start of the AP poll in 1936. Then I think the next pillar is integration. And obviously integration was SC's first All-American was a black guy in the 20s, right? Like, which would have been unfathomable. Bryce Taylor, of course, that would be a thing if you're like Alabama, who didn't integrate until what, 72?
Decades later.
Yeah. And so then you have integration, and then the next chapter, I think, is about the splits of Division I, which is 1978.
Okay.
That's when Division I AA forms, FCS as it's called now. Then the next chapter, I think, is like the birth of like commercialization,
I was
which
going to
is
say
the mid '80s,
the TV deals in
which
the
is
80s.
because that's when Oklahoma wins their court case. The TV rights go to the conferences, and then the '90s is your next chapter, and that's the modernity of the game in which you finally lock in a number 1 versus number 2 bowl game with the Bowl Alliance in the mid '90s. The early '90s, you have schools like Florida State and Penn State finally join conferences. They're no longer independent. The mid '90s, you form the Big 8 and the Southwestern Conference sort of merge to become the Big 12. Then your next chapter is the BCS. Your chapter after that is the next wave of realignment.
How long did the BCS last?
Was it from 98 to 2013.
Yeah, so it was more than a decade of the BCS. I
think it was technically 16 seasons.
There were tweaks to it, but the BCS was still the way that things worked.
Yeah. And then the playoff comes in, and then right after the playoff comes in, I think you have the money comes in. And the money comes into play with NIL and with now revenue share, right? NIL we saw, was that like 5 years ago now? And now
Crazy.
revenue share is going to be involved in the game. Alicia, I will play dumb here. Explain to me, allow me to be the dumb peon in the room. Explain all of this to me like I'm 5.
Okay, and I have felt like a dumb peon this entire time of this the antitrust lawsuits and the settlement between the House and the NCAA and all this kind of stuff. Like, I felt like I've been completely just everything going over my head, everything not making a lot of sense to me in terms of a big picture thing. So I put my head down and tried to straighten it all out in my head. And this is what I've come away with. So basically, last week or early this week, I don't even remember like what day of the year it is. There was finally a settlement agreed upon between the House representatives and the NCAA and the judge that was overseeing whether or not the settlement was legal, because of all there was antitrust. There were multiple different lawsuits that were in play that the House and the NCAA were trying to basically resolve by coming up with this new rule set that would then settle the lawsuits that were in place. And those lawsuits were essentially about players profiting, their ability to profit off of their name, image, and likeness, which was previously restricted. And then there was a legal challenge, and then that legal challenge brought about the dawn of NIL in college football, and college football wasn't necessarily ready for that. And then now we're in the dawn of revenue sharing on top of NIL. And this settlement basically is we talked about, like, last episode, we talked about, like, USC needs a Vatican II. This is like the poor man's Vatican II. Like, it's not, it's a reset a little bit for college football, but in a way that still feels very piecemeal and not necessarily very well designed in all senses. Like, there's a lot of skepticism about this sticking. So let's start with the stuff that isn't revenue sharing. So there are the antitrust lawsuits. There's going to be back pay for student athletes going back to 2016 because of their lost NIL revenue. And that back pay is going to be in the range of like $2.8 billion that's going to get spread out to those Division I athletes. On top of that, there will be scholarship limits, which I think we've talked about before, but this is all going to get now locked in, which is they're not going to have, they used to have scholarship limits and roster limits. So a football roster would be 85 scholarships, and a football roster would have 85 scholarships, and it could have a max of 120 players. So you can have that many walk-ons filling the gap. Like, I want to say USC, usually their roster was usually in the range of like 100 in terms of scholarships, and then the walk-ons that were sort of filling it in. Now, there will be no scholarship limit, but there will be a shorter roster cap. So the roster cap for football is now 105. If USC wants to hand out scholarships for 105 players, they can do so. If USC wants to hand out scholarships to 60 players, they can do so. If they want it to be 85 still, they can do so. It just has to be within 105. One of the big changes for this is going to be baseball. Baseball was limited to 11.7 scholarships on the men's side with a 40-man roster, which was a huge disadvantage to USC baseball because that limitation of scholarships forcing the bulk of your roster to be non-scholarship players at a private school that is very expensive to attend puts you at a disadvantage compared to like Fullerton, which is a public school and much more affordable to attend.
Yeah, it's really stopping Vanderbilt from winning national championships.
I'm not making excuses for USC here. I'm just saying there was a public-private split that was sort of problematic with the baseball one. Now baseball's scholarship limit and roster limit are 34. So USC, if they want to pay for scholarships for 34 baseball players, they can. Basketball, it'll be 15 where it was 13. Softball, which I don't think USC has a softball team, but if they wanted to get into the softball space, it would be 25 where it was 12. Volleyball, it was 4.5 for men and it was 12 for women. Now it'll be 18 for both. So there's going to be these limits that are just sort of like spread across all of college sports, and teams will be able to dole out their scholarships within those limits however they feel like. The worry here is that they're going to spend 105 scholarships on football and, you know, not offer more scholarships for volleyball, you know? Does that all make sense? Any questions?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the non-revenue sharing stuff. That's just the aside. The revenue sharing stuff is this. Universities can pay players directly from a pool of around $20.5 million. That's for each school, and that is for this coming academic year. So July 2025 to June 2026, you will have $20.5 million to spend on your athletes across all sports. The expectation from multiple reporting sources is that the bigger schools in athletics will be spending no less than $15 million on their football program of that chunk. So the vast majority of that chunk is going to go to football. One of the speculations for some SEC teams was that from USA Today was that in order to do the back pay for the back pay for the revenue share, the NIL revenue loss, the calculation for that, there's a formula for deciding how much each person that joins in that back pay thing gets, and that formula allots the funds that are going to back pay, allots 75% for football, 15% for basketball, 5% for women's basketball, and 5% for all of the other sports. And there's speculation that a lot of the SEC programs are just going to follow that formula. So they do 75% for football, 15% for men's basketball, 5% for women's basketball, 5% for other sports. But the thing is, like, schools don't have to say or disclose what their distribution plan is going to be. So we will not know specifically what USC's percentage is on how they're meeting out the revenue share for all of their different sports. So there's going to be a little bit of a mystery, and there might even be some like gamesmanship that goes on because, you know, you never know how much somebody else is spending. There's also the calculation of like priorities at your school. Like, I would argue that USC women's basketball is probably going to command more than 5%, given the growth and the growth and star power and all of that of USC basketball, USC women's basketball, where USC doesn't have a softball team. So they're not going to necessarily need to dole out their revenue for softball. But USC has strong traditions in baseball, strong traditions in the swimming sports, certainly strong traditions in track. How is USC going to work out all of those things is I think the big question. On top of revenue share, do you have any questions about the revenue share?
No, I guess the only thing actually I do is you talk about how schools do not have to disclose how they're distributing the funds, right? Like the percentages or the amounts and how they're divvying it up, right? But obviously we know SC is a private school. Mm-hmm. But for public schools, even though they don't have to disclose as an athletic department, could it be FOIA requested for public schools? But could you find this out the same way that people find out,
like coach salaries?
Yeah, or through tax documentation.
I suspect you could. I guess the question is
that would be something we'd find out way down
the line. Yeah. And I also think it would be interesting, depending on the reporting. Does the school have to report by sport, or can the school just report they are paying $20.5 million to athletics?
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's that, and not have to point which way they're going. Now, then there's a Title IX question about where Title IX fits into this, because it frankly cannot fit into the system that we're currently talking about. Mm-hmm. Because Title IX is you're supposed to spend equally on women's and men's sports, and based on the formula we just talked about, you're not spending equally on women's and men's sports. Right. But then I don't know, does that only apply to scholarships? Is it still going to be a scholarship question? Again, there are so many. Part of the reason people are so uncertain about this is there are so many unanswered questions and complications that could come up. I think the Title IX question is a real question, and I certainly have not seen an answer specifically to that. There may already be an answer out there. I just certainly haven't seen it.
Ron Murray in chat says, this evens the playing field for all schools.
This is the tough thing.
I think it's a pipe dream, unfortunately, because you don't have to distribute the money in any specific way as of now, unless Title IX changes and unless there's further legislation put in or whatever it is. And so there's going to be some schools that that might put all of their eggs in one basket per se.
Yeah, I mean, that's Trent in the Discord had a thing that he posted earlier today that I'm just going to straight up read, because I think it sort of gets to the point here is baseball is going to be interesting because USC has the option to fund scholarships if it chooses to, no impact on revenue share. That would give the program a leg up against many schools. But do schools like Fullerton and Irvine go all in on baseball with scholarships and solid revenue share because they have nothing else to spend on? Definitely possible. Back to USC and major programs in general, is there a benefit to leaving more football funding to NIL because the players are more valuable while using the other percentage amount for sports like baseball? Or do they just fully commit to football with rev share and leave baseball to hand out, $5,000 NIL deals whenever that's possible? I think these calculations, every athletic department in the country is having these calculations right now. And in some senses, it will uneven the playing field for a lot of different schools. It will even the playing field of schools in the same classification. So if you think of a school like USC, who is very football focused, and you compare them to a school like Texas that is very football focused, and Alabama that is very football focused, and Ohio State that is very football focused, whoever they are, it evens the playing field for those schools against each other. In that sense, USC, where it has maybe been behind in terms of or this is the argument about the SEC and the SEC is not what. Yeah, well, this is what happens when everyone gets to outright pay their players.
Jump in here though, really quick.
Yeah.
Like you say that SC, Texas, Alabama are football focused, and they are absolutely in terms of fan support and all that kind of stuff. Yes, those are also three programs that put a lot of funds into other sports as well.
Yes, well, and again, this is
like those are all teams that are vying for the Directors Cup. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So like you have your classification of teams that are vying for things like the Directors Cup, where USC wants to be good at all of their sports.
Yeah.
So they are going to put most of their stuff into football, but that doesn't mean they're going to abandon the other sports. And a lot of other schools will also follow that mold because they are their brand identity is about that sort of well-roundedness. There will be other schools like I'm just going to wager Texas A&M that's just like, screw it, we're going all in on football. And there are schools in, like Walter in the chat says, Big East schools are mainly basketball. So what do? Well, that's the thing is the Big East schools are not going to be on an even playing field with the football elite unless they like really wanted to. But the fact is they won't want to. They will want to be on an even playing field with the basketball elite. So your Dukes and your North Carolinas, like maybe that evens the playing field between them a little bit, but only within that classification. And then you have schools that are not in that elite, where you're gonna necessarily fall behind because you can't afford. Like there are schools out there Power 5 schools out there who maybe can't even afford the full 20.5 million revenue share. Like they don't bring in enough revenue to allot that much to revenue share. So, if you're Iowa State and you don't have a lot of NIL power and you can't afford revenue, Iowa State is literally one of the articles I read about one of the programs that was like, we don't have enough money. But they're going to try to, maybe they'll go into debt or whatever it is to get that, to maximize that, because in order to basically save their athletic department, they're going to have to find a way to do it. But the fact is that like there will be schools that can't afford to play at the big boys table, and they will fall away. Many of them in Group of 5, right?
Yeah.
And then there will be schools that say, screw it. Football is. There's no point in competing in football when I'm never going to be successful in football. So I'm going to take all my stuff and put it into a sport that I can be successful in, and I can, bring home trophies or whatever. So maybe, maybe it is your Fullertons and your Irvines go all in on baseball because, they either don't have football or don't want to go all in on football. I think we could see some football programs fold or go down a division. There's so many that are there's so many calculations that each school will have to make, and those calculations will ensure that the playing field is not even.
Yeah.
Because even from a USC perspective, is the playing field going to be equal between a school like USC that wants to be well-rounded and fund all of their program, wants to maintain, we'll get to this in a little bit, maintain 20, actually, let's just get to this now. Jen Cohen released the State of Troy a couple hours ago, on Thursday, and I think the big takeaway from all of this is this one line. USC will invest the maximum permissible $20.5 million in 2025 and 2026. Combined with the creation of new scholarships, we are increasing our investment in all 23 programs. So that is a declaration of intent. USC intends to, number one, keep all 23 of their scholarship programs, of their Division I programs. Number two, fund new scholarships for those programs where there are scholarship increases. And number three, invest at an even higher rate in all of those programs than they were before. So USC doing that means that they are spreading pieces of the pie 23 different ways. And obviously those are very different thickness of the pie chart, but they are still being spread 23 different ways. Where another school, and again, I'll just pick on Texas A&M. If Texas A&M wants to spend $20 million on football, they can. If they want to go all in, I don't know if anybody will actually do this, but there certainly is a possibility that there will be schools out there that are spending, $20 million on football. is that an even playing field then? If USC spending $15 million and they're spending $20 million, like then you get into okay. So is the playing field ever going to be even? Because the way that we're seeing USC dole out NIL deals right now speaks to USC's aggressiveness in NIL. Because you have to remember, rev share is capped 20.5, but NIL is still to a point the wild, wild west. There's still going to be gaps for everybody.
Well, this is where I wondered, like, USC will invest the maximum permissible $20.5 million. That is the revenue share. But it also says, combined with the creation of new scholarships, we are increasing our investment in all 23 programs. I wonder if there's a situation where they go with is there a world in which SC does add more scholarships for some Olympic sports?
So they add more scholarships for volleyball, which is an increase in investment.
It increases investment.
Yeah, but not using
you're not using revenue share there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like because it doesn't say we're increasing our investment with revenue share. It just says we're increasing our investment. Like, that is so vague.
Yeah.
And like, it sort of needs to be, just because I'm pretty sure it's probably flexible even in-house, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know that it completely answers our questions, other than what you said about, like, this just says they're not cutting any sports. And at least on the surface, there's not going to be any sport that is inherently hurt by these things.
I think
will be more than likely there will be sports that are not helped as much as others.
Yes,
right?
But I think I read into Jen Cohen's statement as, at the very least, no sports will be losing scholarships.
Yes, right.
Which is much better than there will be many other athletic departments that do not follow that, that either don't have the resources and have to make tough decisions, or don't have the will to be well rounded in that sense. So, the bigger answer is just that, there will. I think that. I guess I'll say what the other takeaway I had from the State of Troy release that they put out was this quote from Jen Cohen. Higher education and college athletics are undergoing a broad and challenging transformation, and we recognize that during this time of financial stress, we must increase revenue, reduce cost, and utilize our resources wisely and responsibly. As a result, we have been reevaluating every aspect of our business as a department, and we will continue to seek creative new revenue streams, modernize our infrastructure, and operationalize efficiencies. Which, we already have people in our lives who have been laid off who are in athletic departments who have been laid off. And we can very clearly tie it to these things, right? Athletic departments are going to, I think, shrink in some areas as they expand in others. For instance, USC has expanded their football program. Are they going to shrink the athletic department resources that they give to tennis? I mean, they might not. It's entirely possible they don't, but I think it's entirely possible that they do. So it's just going to run more like a business. And that's one of the quotes that I saw, I think from The Athletic, was somebody who was saying that athletic departments have run like nonprofits, and now they're going to have to operate as though they're businesses, which means there's going to be a financial bottom line in a way that they're sort of in a certain way there was before, but now in a much more clear, like, this is about revenue and not just about fundraising. This is about doing more brand deals and all of that kind of stuff. And
I do think there's some nuance there, right? Because as a whole, the athletic department ideally needs to break even, right? But, like, each sport doesn't need to.
No.
And that's, I mean, and it's been that way the whole time. But now even more so, I think it sort of gets heightened that way, right? Like, not every sport makes the same amount of money. Not every sport gets the same amount of investment. Every sport has the same type of overhead, same type of revenue, all those kind of things. It'll be interesting to see how that sort of balances out as we go forward. The other news on the money side of this, not that this completely is tied to it, but another channel for SC to have some more capital is that they've partnered with Learfield for a 15-year media rights deal. According to Sports Business Journal, Learfield is involved in branding contents like student-athlete influencer marketing and NIL resources. Quote, during the 2024 fiscal year, its production arm, Learfield Studios, generated north of 1.2 billion with a B impressions and drove 50 million in branded content revenue from Learfield's website. Quote, Learfield's Compass NIL powers increased opportunities for student athletes to participate in NIL activities. Compass NIL is an exchange exclusively designed and built by Learfield to manage NIL deal making between brand partners and student athletes across 160 sports properties while continuing to facilitate NIL merchandise licensing activity at scale. It's expected to help a handful of roles such as supervising producer and head of NIL business development will be added in the coming months. That again is per
That's at
sports,
USC Business Journal.
Yeah, for the sports business.
So I mean, the point there is that by partnering with Learfield, USC will be bringing on like Learfield liaisons, essentially.
This sounds like what they wanted to do with Boulevard, right?
Yes. And I think that this is another sign of, the issue with Boulevard is that they were trying to do a good idea with people who weren't experienced in that field. And the plus side of partnering with Learfield is that Learfield, this is what they do. So theoretically, they'll be better at it. Yeah. I don't think it's a coincidence that USC has been much more aggressive in their NIL usage just before this 15-year media rights deal comes out. I don't think it's a coincidence that USC has been as aggressive as they've been even before the House settlement happened, which makes me think that USC thinks they have this figured out. And between Learfield, between their NIL stuff, they think they have it figured out, which means USC is not afraid of the other big addition from the settlement, which is the College Sports Commission and NIL Go. Michael, do you know what those are?
No.
Okay. The College Sports Commission is the new oversight and enforcement arm of the NCAA.
Okay.
So they are going to be the ones that mete out punishment or sort of like oversee whether or not everybody's following the rules when it comes to NIL. They have an independent clearinghouse that's going to be called, the platform is going to be called NIL Go, which is going to be run by Deloitte, which is going to review any NIL deals that are above $600 to make sure that those deals have a, quote, valid business purpose and are not more than whatever arbitrary number they decide to put on the max NIL deal thing, which I have still not seen an actual number, but that they are not exceeding that number and that they are valid business proposals. So Deloitte will be running the clearinghouse where they will say this NIL deal is approved because it is valid. And if you don't if you don't get approval or you skirt the rules or the CSC, which I'm calling College Sports Commission, decides that you've done something wrong, supposedly the CSC has greater punitive power and the ability to strike at infractions more quickly than the previous committee on enforcements, for instance. Mm-hmm. So what this sounds like to me is like it's a threat. It's a threat that this College Sports Commission and this clearinghouse are going to exist, and thus, because they exist, you will follow the rules because you don't want to get punished with punishment that has not been totally made clear yet. Could be, suspensions, could be ineligibility, that kind of stuff. Could be fines, whatever it is. Because I wonder, could they fine the revenue share pool at a school? Like, I suspect that has to be in play. But the issue is that, like, somebody's going to have to get popped first in order for that threat to actually exist. Like, they will have to give a show of force to prove that they have this power at all, which is why I find it very interesting that USC is so publicly and aggressively going all out on NIL and putting its neck out there to potentially be the one that gets popped, which again brings me back to, I think USC is extremely confident in the deals that they have been putting together from an NIL validity standpoint, which makes sense because USC is in one of the media capitals of the world. USC can point to legitimate brands that it has deals with, that it can funnel money towards athletes. Like these aren't necessarily like car dealerships that are just handing out cash. USC has deals with airlines, and USC has deals with sports drinks and all of these kinds of stuff. So in a weird way, what I'm saying is USC's aggression here has made me more confident that USC will not be in trouble about all of this kind of stuff. Well,
to go back to the Learfield thing, just perusing the website. Which have you done this?
I have swam through so much jargon and just blah 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 today, Michael.
So it's Learfield I've heard of because they are involved in like sports radio, right? Yeah. Learfield, Westwood One, like all those kind of things.
And Learfield runs Sidearm Sports, which USC has as a stats.
Did some stats stuff. But if you look at the PR sort of feed that Learfield has, you see Oklahoma State, VCU, but also Ohio State, Florida, Alabama, Oregon, Washington, Oklahoma. Like these are schools that have some sort of partnership in some sense with Learfield. And the SC press release, which came out on the 5th, very, very similar to the Ohio State one, which is on the 9th. So very, very similar. The other thing, I don't know if you saw this, Gators at Sea. Did you see this?
No.
Florida Gators announced second annual Gators at Sea fan cruise presented by cruises.com for June 26th.
Hey, are we all going to go on the USC fan cruise? Are we going to do it?
I might be down. Yeah. This one, Utopia of the Seas from RCL, 3 nights.
I'm going to be honest. You and I love to cruise. I don't know if I'd want to go on.
What if we were like a special guest and like we did a pod on a cruise ship?
I mean, that would be super cool. I'd be down.
Yeah.
I don't know. Either way, there's so much at play here. I do think USC is well positioned. We always knew they were well positioned. USC is in a unique situation where USC has the locale, and it's not just about the weather. It's about the sort of media connections, brand connections, all of those things in Los Angeles that give USC that should put USC in a strong position. USC has a very strong alumni base that they can tap into for all of these things. Like, it all makes sense that this is working out for USC. The other problem that the NCAA has here is that the other problem that USC has here is, or that everybody has here, is that no one knows really what's going on for sure. Like, everyone is walking into a dark room and trying to find, the path forward while being completely blind. So, USC could think they have everything in order, and then they'll run into the into the clearinghouse and something will go wrong, or USC will have gotten everything in order because of USC's advantages in a media capital, and it won't have mattered because the clearinghouse actually has no power, and schools like, again, I'll pick on Texas A&M, just do things willy-nilly, and it doesn't really change, and it doesn't really matter, like that they go all out, like pay for play, and just sort of do a little smokescreen to hide it, and they're allowed to do that. So it's still it's still very uncertain, and that's sort of part of the problem too, because this is only for this year. I mean, this could be like the NFL salary cap, where
goes up and
it's going to
up.
increase by a percentage next year, and so whatever it comes, like next year will still be this system, but it'll just be different dollar amount, but also it could be a completely different system. Like it could be completely different. So any planning that you do for this season could just be for naught. It could just be pointless. The other thing that I think is really an interesting complication that harkens back to the good old days of college football recruiting. Michael, you remember the good old days of college football recruiting where they would fudge scholarships by having
blue shirts?
No. By having early enrollees count for the previous cycle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit like that because
what's the year?
The year's
the fiscal year, which is the academic year.
The fiscal year is from July to June, which means that revenue share for football will be factored into two different seasons, because football is fall of 2025 and spring of 2026, and those are two different football seasons with two different rosters.
Yeah.
So you then have to work out, like, okay, you can't spend all your money on the fall 2025 roster, because you need to be able to pay transfers that might want to come in January.
Yeah.
And you need to pay for, new recruits and all that kind of stuff. So you have to sort of then even out between the two, which also, this was the speculation that was brought up by The Athletic. There is speculation this might lead to tanking. Because what do you do if you are entering the fall 2025, you don't have a good quarterback situation, you didn't get the transfers you wanted, whatever. You can tank the 2025 season and have your full allotment of NIL, revenue share dollars for that year to then use in the spring for transfers. So,
and then the other thing is, if you talk about schools being run or athletic departments being run like businesses, you have to remember that in professional sports, for every Ballmer and Cuban and Roman Abramovich, there's 10 million different owners like Reinsdorf, and Dolan, and the Pirates guy with the funny sounding name that I can't remember. All those guys who are running teams
to just break even.
To just break even. The jackass with the ace, Fisher, right? Yeah. Like, there will be schools that do this, right?
You're going to relocate San Jose State to Sacramento.
I mean, you never know. You never know. It's all complicated.
Okay.
Before want to move on though.
I have one more thing to say about this.
Sure.
Which is, unfortunately, there are consequences to all of this. One of the consequences is absolutely going to be schools pushing the cost of all of this, the increased cost of all this, because they didn't have to pay $20 million of anything last year, and now they're going to have to pay $20 million. Mm-hmm. They're going to push the cost onto fans. We're going to see increased fees. We're going to see increased ticket prices. We're going to see increased concession prices. They're going to
God forbid the top pay for everything.
No,
anything.
They're going to push this off to marketing partners and potentially private equity, which is a whole other thing that I can't even get into, because who the hell knows. But my big takeaway here is you will see ads on jerseys before long. I guarantee you will see ads on college football jerseys. Book it.
Okay, I see as an ad on the jersey. What do you want?
Who's got a good logo?
I mean, let's be real. It's going to be United, right?
I mean, it's going to be United, yes. Yeah. But like, okay, in very, very quick aside, in the F1 video game, when we would make our custom teams or whatever, and you put you put the marketing stuff on your liveries, because that's, by the way, how marketing stuff works in every other sport internationally. Like, you are just blanketed by branding to the point where when you are designing a car for an F1 video game, they give you fake brands to put on the car.
Yeah, because you don't look real if you don't look
real if you don't have the car. So I always put brands on my car because they had cool looking logos.
Yeah.
So like, I just need somebody who has a cool looking logo. Kenny says Blue Chew on brand. Grant says Pachanga Resort. I mean, Pachanga Morongo, 100% going to happen.
I am very thankful that the Cubs jersey sponsor is Motorola, and it's a blue logo that matches the jersey. It just looks like a patch with an M on it. The fear is you end up with something like what the Braves have, which is like it's like an oil I don't remember what it is, but it's like a big ass yellow patch. Just a color that's not in their palette. You know what I mean?
You know what I want just for the giggles of it, like USC sponsored by Deloitte. I'm sure everyone will love that.
BB Go. Temu.
I mean,
yeah.
Trader Joe's. Right. Let's go.
There you go. Traders would work. Trader Troy's. All right. I was gonna go on more about the cruise stuff that I read, but we don't have time. We gotta go to the news.
Okay.
All right, new recruiting stuff. SC gets a commitment from 4-star corner Peyton Dyer, 6 foot, 190 pounds from Duluth, Georgia. Picked the Trojans over the other USC, South Carolina. He decommitted from the Cox and was looking at Georgia, Penn State. His mom is from Sacramento, which famously, of course, is the capital of California. And so coming westward works out. Composite has him at the number 264 spots in the rankings. That's the 24/7 Sports Composite. He's a versatile DB. He can play cornhole.
He can play cornhole. I bet he's very good at cornhole.
Yeah, he can play corner, nickel, safety, wherever you want him in the defensive backfield.
Yeah, really good pickup for USC. Feels like not one of the Georgia guys destined to decommit because of his California ties and because of the way that USC is doing commitments now. So big pickup from big corner. This cornerback class is big and it is loaded, so it just keeps getting better.
Yeah, would you say? Hold on. Do I not have it? I don't have it. I don't have this size. Doesn't matter if you want it.
You don't have it.
I don't have it on the board.
I'm not going to repeat it.
Wow.
He makes me drool.
There we go. That works.
No, the next one does.
The other one, yes. 5-star tight end Mark Bowman.
He makes me drool.
Yeah, he's reclassified from 26 to 27. 6'4", 225 pounds from Mater DI.
Mater DI?
Haven't heard of that one, from Santa Ana, California. Picked SC over Oregon, Texas, Georgia. The number 1 tight end in the country, number 2 recruit in California, number 11 nationally. Again, 27 class, so he's a junior.
No, 26. He reclassified from 27.
Oh, 226 from
226 from 27.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I can't read. But gush over the new tight end.
I will let Greg Biggins do the gushing for me.
Sure.
His comparison is for Mason Taylor from LSU. Quote, has a rare combination of size, skill, athleticism, and toughness, and is one of the few players you can study and really struggle to find a discernible weakness in his game. This is not a quote, but the evaluation went on to say that it would not be surprising to see him make an immediate impact and that he should be a 3-and-done player.
Wow.
Just saying.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Now, the problem continues to be that USC has actually recruited the tight end position rather well recently.
Sure.
It hasn't actually been a problem spot for USC on the recruiting trail. It has been a problem spot for USC in terms of production. Part of that is that USC's tight ends are perpetually injured.
Yeah.
Just perpetually injured, all of them injured all the time. And part of that is that, USC has in parts not known how to use them, in parts prioritized receivers or running backs, in part a whole different host of things that has caused USC to not have a dominant tight end in recent years. However, the thing that we will continue to come back to, we will come back to it until we can no longer come back to it, is that one Lincoln Riley produced one of the great tight end seasons in like college football history with Mark. Was it Mark Andrews?
I was going to say, Lincoln Riley has had a Macchia winning tight end in every year in which he's coached a tight end named Mark. One season as a head coach, 2017. Mark Andrews won the
62 receptions, 958 yards, 8 touchdowns.
Pretty good, yeah.
He had more. He was ahead of a freshman named CeeDee Lamb. So, it can be done.
CeeDee started as a tight end?
No. In the receiving, he was second.
Gotcha.
He was number 2 overall pass catcher for Oklahoma that year.
I was thinking that CeeDee had a Fred Davis origin.
No,
story.
that would have been interesting. But the point stands is that Lincoln Riley does know how to use a tight end. I think what it comes down to is the tight end needs to
fit within the offense.
Needs to fit within the offense, and it needs to make sense that the tight end is dominant. And I think that Lake McRee is a great tight end, but I don't know that he's a dominant receiving tight end. That doesn't mean he's not a great, does a really good job for USC, but also he has to be healthy. Also, it has to make sense to throw to him instead of really good receivers that are available elsewhere. So there's a weird balance that has to happen, but Mark Bowman is, I would suspect that by the time he comes to USC, he will be one of, if not the highest rated tight end that USC has brought in memory.
Blake Ayles, yeah. SC ranks number 1 in the 2026 recruiting class. 28 commits, 7 in the top 100, which is all a good thing. All right, let's wrap this up with a super quick mailbag.
You've got mail.
All right, questions we got in the chat. Kenny says, what would you say has been the biggest story in college football in the last 25 years? Can I go just big picture? One word? It's just money?
I mean, yeah, that's...
Because money affects both the playoff and... Money affects everything. The playoff, realignment, affects the change in how we view money within the game, how Reggie Bush was viewed versus how Caleb Williams was viewed completely differently in terms of money and opportunity, all that kind of stuff, right? NIL? It seems like a cop-out to just have, an intangible idea of money, but it is. It's money, I think.
Yes, it's definitely money. I think if we're not going to say money because it's kind of boring, I would say number one would be the institution of the playoff, because that was for 100 years or so, college football had not had a playoff, and the acceleration that we're seeing is all heavily tied to the addition of the playoff, because the playoff is what's changing every other year too. I would say that Nick Saban's dynasty at Alabama was a pretty damn big story.
Yeah.
The Penn State scandal, pretty damn big story.
Mm-hmm.
Reggie Bush was a pretty damn big story. But I think I could also go with Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12 for the SEC I will continue to say was a massive domino that got overshadowed by other moves, but also was the first one that was of a cataclysmic sort of event for the landscape of college football.
Yeah. A&M going to the SEC too, breaking up the Big 12. Yeah. The Big 12 as it originally was. Yeah. Grant says, what do we think of Max Brown's video from this week? I haven't seen the last Max Brown TikTok I watched was the one where he was talking about his wife Victoria's trip to a engagement party.
Which by the way,
brilliant.
his TikToks,
his TikTok is incredible.
Where he does the like announcer voice to things that his wife is doing was tremendous content.
If you're not in the Max and Victoria Garrick Brown TikTok universe, get involved. Alex Wood, his fiance Aubrey, all of them tremendous on the TikTok. Aubrey's brother Bryant Gavello, incredible. They're all incredible.
Okay, I looked up his YouTube though, and it does look like a video worth watching from our perspective. Is what if the coolest program ever never got busted? And it's the cover image is Bryce Young in a USC jersey, and Snoop between them is a national title trophy. The lipstick.
We talked about this before. I will watch the video absolutely because I love Max's content and it's a very intriguing idea. I do wonder if he brings up the brain drain on the coaching side. Because like we've talked about it, like as much as the sanctions were a death blow to the Pete Carroll era and all that kind of stuff, that he knew they were coming and all of that. SC had lost all of their coaches to the point of like.
I will continue to argue.
Pete would have needed to reinvent himself.
Pete wasn't going to stick around for much longer than he was there.
Yeah.
Pete's goal was always to go back to the NFL. There was no question that was always his goal. Every year for the 3 or 4 years before he left, every year was, is Pete Carroll going to go? Is Pete Carroll going to go? Yeah,
Dolphins,
there was constant. I mean, maybe he stays another year and then we don't have to have the stupid Hall of Fame conversation every time.
Sure.
But I don't think he sticks around that differently, or that much longer, which means that USC is going to have to find a replacement for one of the great coaches of all time. And I think
that could be the thing. It's like the SC goes to Lane Kiffin, is that if the job is more attractive without the air of dirt being there, right, and the sanctions coming and all that stuff,
I just think
then maybe rather than going after Lane Kiffin, which was a continuity move in a lot of ways, even if it wasn't directly continuity, it sort of still was.
Here's the problem: is that no matter what. If we assume that Pete was going to leave in a year or two, which I think is completely reasonable, if not the time he actually left, is Lane Kiffin not the hire no matter what? Number one, it's either Lane Kiffin or Steve Sarkisian. One of the two is getting hired at that point.
I don't know that.
I think that was why? Because Pat Hayden was the one doing the hiring. So no matter what, you're getting a Pat Hayden hired coach, which is likely to be Lane Kiffin or Sark. And as Kenny says in the chat, the thing is, like, yes, the scholarships hurt USC. That's absolutely true. But USC is not where it is right now because of the scholarships. Lane Kiffin masterfully dealt with the scholarship reductions. Masterfully. Yeah. Steve Sarkisian did not fail at USC because of scholarship reductions. Right. He failed because of his own personal demons. And you and I are in agreement that if Sark had not fallen victim to his own personal demons, we think he would have been a perfectly reasonably successful head coach. Would he have won a national title at USC? I don't know about that. Would he be as good of a head coach as he is now, having learned through failure and learned under Nick Saban? Probably not. But I think at the very least, he's 9-win Sark, at the very least. So USC was already in a position to continue to be successful. And then they got two hires I don't think they got those hires wrong, even to be fair. They got the management of those hires wrong, and they got unlucky with the other one. Or just maybe not seeing through the sark of it all and avoiding that mess, avoiding that ticking time bomb was maybe the mistake. Either way, USC is where they are now because for decades, USC's athletic department was not well run, and the hires that USC's athletic department made were not well thought out, and the resources that USC was giving their football program were not sufficient to keep up with the arms race in college football. USC didn't keep up with the arms race in college football because they got sanctions. USC didn't keep up with the arms race in college football because, as friend of the pod Ryan Abraham was saying back in freaking 2005, that USC was like, well, why are we going to give you a new weight room when you're winning championships with the one that you got? That was USC's mindset. So I don't buy this idea that if USC had not gotten sanctioned, that USC would have magically been competitive, because no, I think USC was competitive because they had Pete Carroll, and the moment he left, they were going to fall victim to the mismanagement of an athletic department that had been mismanaged since, the 90s.
I do wonder, in a world in which sanctions aren't there, is Jack Del Rio not just the guy?
I mean, that's entirely possible, but is that a winning hire? Is Jeff Fisher a winning hire?
Well, I mean, Jack Del Rio at the time, his Jaguar tenure was trending downward, but he would have had a resume that was far better than anybody else that was bandied about. So I don't know. We'll watch the Max stuff. Absolutely.
Max's videos are all really good. But again, I think it's an interesting thought experiment, to be sure. I just think I come out of that thought experiment thinking, no, USC's problems weren't that. USC's problems were beyond that, and those problems weren't going away if sanctions went away.
Yeah. Okay. Last thing before we roll. Find on Natty's says, does anyone know where I can find all the kickoff times? Yeah, SC released the kickoff times for the first few weeks. That always happens at the end of May every year. That's when they start to do the TV draft.
Want to run through those real quick?
Yeah, week 1, Missouri State is 4:30 kickoff on Big Ten Network. Week 2, 4:30 kickoff again on FS1 against the Fighting Clay Heltons of Georgia Southern. Week 3, which is the weird one for me, a 12:30 kickoff on CBS at Purdue. Why is that a CBS game?
Because
I got nothing.
It's the third week of out of conference play. I want to say that week is always bare bones, and it's USC.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the Notre Dame game, obviously, at 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 local time on WNBC.
Oh, we have a couple more too.
Northwestern
is on Friday. It got moved to Friday, November 7th at 6 p.m. on Fox. And then
Iowa's a day game.
Is either noon or noon 30 on a channel to be named later. The 12:30 would be CBS, and the noon would be ESPN or FS1.
Maybe I'm fascinated. Is that because it's homecoming? Was SC able to
force a very short window of potential time?
Yeah, I don't know. Either way, knowing that the homecoming game has a set time, I think helps
very
everything
helpful.
else be sort of figured out. So, all right. Yeah, Northwestern's on a Friday, November 7th. So,
Taylor Mays is on the Hall of Fame ballot this year.
Yeah, there was a couple other guys too. I don't remember.
Jeff Bregel and Mark Carrier, but they've been on a while. Bregel.
All right, we will be back next week. Until then, Wednesday at 4. Promise. We promise. For real.
For real.
All right, we'll see you guys next time. See ya.
See ya.